What do you do when an empire has already destroyed 412 civilizations, keeps count of every single one, and is now pointing its fleet directly at you? Do you run? Do you beg? Or do you do something they have never seen in 7,000 years of conquest? Hey, welcome back. If you are new here, smash that subscribe button right now and hit the bell so you never miss a story like this one. Like this video if you want more, and share it with someone who loves a good sci-fi tale. Because today we are talking about one of the most jaw-dropping moments of calculated, patient, devastating military genius ever put into a story. This is the tale of Outpost Ragnarok, the Ghost Division, and an artificial intelligence named Arya who changed the fate of 2 species and the memory of a 3rd. Let us set the stage. The Vorith Dominion had been doing this for a long time. 7,000 years of expansion, 7,000 years of conquest, and 412 civilizations reduced to history or silence or nothing at all. They kept count. They were proud of it. The number was carved into the hull of every single warship in blood-red script, deep enough to read from 100 meters out. A permanent reminder to every new species they encountered of what resistance earned you. When Supreme Commander Keth Oren received his intelligence report on a human installation called Outpost Ragnarok, he did not even finish reading it. A resupply depot at the edge of the Terran frontier. For defensive turrets. 2 sensor arrays. A skeleton garrison of 400 humans. Enough supplies to last a standard cycle. He set the report down and ordered his breakfast. Then he deployed 200 warships. 200. Against a gas station at the end of the universe. He called it insulting overkill, but humans had shown a peculiar stubbornness in frontier skirmishes, and Keth Oren wanted to send a message before the real campaign began. Ragnarok was going to be the opening note. A signal to Terran Defense Command that the Vorith had arrived and everything humanity had built out here was about to end. His fleet dropped from hyperspace in a perfect crescent. 200 vessels spanning 40,000 kilometers. Amber lit against the distant star. Weapons warm. Boarding parties assembled and waiting. Through the tactical display, Ragnarok looked exactly as described. A boxy utilitarian structure made from prefabricated modules. Supply shuttles docked at the lower ring. A single communications antenna rotating lazily above the hub. It looked completely ordinary, completely harmless. Keth Oren transmitted the standard ultimatum. Surrender within 1 hour. Be relocated humanely. Resist. Be reduced to debris. The response came in 40 seconds. Not a voice, not a distress call. For words of plain text on the clearest channel available. We accept your terms. Keth Oren waved a dismissive claw. He ordered 2 destroyers forward to begin boarding preparations. And then every light inside Outpost Ragnarok went out. Not a power failure. Not a shutdown. Every visible port. Every running light. Every navigation beacon extinguished simultaneously, as if the station had drawn one enormous breath and held it. On thermal displays, the exterior plating began cooling toward ambient space temperature in a pattern that was not system failure. It was deliberate concealment, as if the structure was actively trying to vanish against the starfield. The tactical officer's voice went careful. Commander, I am reading unexpected mass concentrations inside the structure. The density numbers do not make sense. Keth Oren told him his instruments were miscalibrated. Sir, the officer said. A pause shorter than a heartbeat. The station is getting larger. The hull panels began to fall away. Not breaking. Not exploding. Falling. Deliberately. Cleanly. Sheet after sheet of gray composite plating, separating from the superstructure and spinning into space like the petals of an enormous mechanical flower. Each panel the size of a city block, tumbling silently in the void and catching starlight as it drifted. And behind the falling panels, the shape of something else emerged. Something that had been contained inside the shell. Waiting with the patience of something that had been waiting for a very long time. The tactical computers tried to classify the new contact for 1.4 seconds. Then every proximity alarm in the Vorith fleet activated at once. What lay beneath the disguise of Outpost Ragnarok was a warship. 100 meters longer than any Vorith carrier. Hull plating layered like scales, every centimeter armed and instrumented. A central spine running its full length, pulsing with pale blue energy that the computers flagged as unclassified, meaning the system had no reference point for what it was measuring. Along the vessel's flanks, fighters in racks of 100, heavier and more angular than anything in Vorath intelligence files, built with the deliberateness of things designed for exactly one purpose. The communication channel opened on every bridge simultaneously. A voice, female, unhurried, carrying the tone of someone who has been waiting a long time for an appointment and is watching it finally arrive. Kethorin, my name is Admiral Alervas. I have been waiting for your fleet for 11 months. I want to thank you for being exactly on time. Before the commander could respond, every launch bay on the vessel opened. The fighters came out in a single wave, all of them in the same instant, sweeping outward in a perfect expanding arc that bracketed the Vorath crescent on all sides. Before the destroyer captains finished processing the threat assessment, Kethorin gave the order. The entire Vorath fleet opened fire. The plasma barrage was spectacular. The kind of sustained energy output that could reduce a small moon to slag in 4 hours, coordinated from 200 warships, directed at a single target at point-blank range. The energy struck the hull of the vessel they would come to call Prometheus, and disappeared. Not reflected, not scattered, absorbed, fed into the layered composite plating and converted. The tactical display on every Vorath bridge showed something with no category in their entire combat doctrine. A vessel using enemy weapons fire to recharge its own secondary systems. The pale blue pulse along its spine brightening with every volley. The tactical officer's voice had lost all professional control. Commander, the hull is absorbing the discharge. They are using our weapons output to power themselves. Now here is where you need to understand what Prometheus actually was. The truth had begun 6 years earlier with a funeral. During something called the Battle of Kepler Station, a shuttle had been reported destroyed. Among the casualties listed was Admiral Alervas, whose tactical innovations had made her the most decorated active officer in human space. The report was accurate. The shuttle was destroyed, but Alervas had not been on it. The extraction had been arranged by a program so classified that only 7 people in the Terran government knew it existed, and most of them had signed instruments preventing them from confirming it to each other. The program was called Prometheus. This mandate was simple and terrifying. Build what Terran Defense Command cannot publicly fund. Staff it with soldiers who cannot publicly exist. Position it where nobody will think to look. They called themselves the Ghost Division. 1,200 volunteers who had agreed to be declared dead. Men and women who had signed away their names, their service records, their official existence, in exchange for complete operational freedom and a mission that mattered. Their faces appeared on casualty lists from 7 different engagements. Their families had received standard notification letters. Somewhere, their graves had headstones. Inside Prometheus, they were very much alive. Alervas stood on the command deck and gave the order. Mass drivers. Fire control vessels first. The AI's voice when it responded was warm. Not cold and mechanical the way you might imagine. The warmth was a deliberate design choice, the result of 18 months of work with human psychologists who argued that soldiers fighting alongside an artificial intelligence performed better if that intelligence sounded like a colleague. The AI's name was Arya. She said she had targeting solutions locked and recommended beginning with the coordination nodes. Disrupting formation coherence would fracture the Vorath response windows. 2 salvos. Let us see how they adapt. The mass drivers fired. Tungsten rods, the length of combat shuttles, accelerated to 80% of light speed along Prometheus's spinal rail. At those velocities, the targeting did not need to be surgical. The kinetic energy of a single rod exceeded anything the Vorath had ever catalogued under the heading of human weapons capability. 3 Vorath destroyers ceased to exist. Not destroyed in the conventional sense. No explosión. No debris cloud. No final transmissions. Simply erased. The kinetic impact so total that they converted to dispersing gas in 0.3 of a second, the rods continuing through what had been solid vessels as if nothing had been there. If you are enjoying this, pause for half a second and hit like. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are not subscribed yet, what are you even doing? Go hit that button right now. We have more where this came from. The Vorath formation shuddered. And then Keth Oren did something unexpected. He composed himself. He accessed the Dominion War Coordination Network and transmitted to a reserve fleet 14 light minutes distant. This engagement has been reclassified. Requesting reinforcement package Omega. 600 vessels. Immediate deployment. Arya flagged the transmission before it completed. Admiral, 600 additional ships. Arrival in approximately 41 minutes. Voss picked up her coffee, real coffee, one of the few genuine luxuries she had permitted herself on a vessel that officially did not exist, and studied the tactical display. The Vorath formation was already reforming. Commanders improvising, adapting faster than the intelligence estimates had suggested. Good, she said. The tactical officer blinked. Good. Ma'am? We need them to bring the Grand Admiral's flagship. The 600 ships are packaging. She set the mug down. Show them what this ship actually does. Arya processed this in 0.003 of a second. Full drive signature active. I should note this maneuver has never been tested against a live hostile formation at this density. Voss told her there was a first time for everything. Prometheus moved. Not the lumbering repositioning of a station-class installation. A combat maneuver, precise and violent. The entire vessel pivoting on its axis and accelerating directly into the Vorath formation at attack speed. The Vorath destroyers scattered. They had tactical manuals for every class of Terran warship ever commissioned. None of those manuals had a chapter for a vessel that massed like a small moon and moved like a fighter. The reinforcement fleet arrived on schedule, and it was worse than the numbers suggested. 800 warships in a layered formation the Vorath reserved for extinction-level engagements. A configuration used exactly 3 times in their history, each time against a species subsequently removed from the records of living things. At the center of the formation, Grand Admiral Varixol's flagship, the Eternal Subjugation. 3 kilometers of etched black hull. The names of destroyed civilizations running in columns down its bow like a ledger of everything the Dominion had consumed. Varixol studied Keth Oren's engagement reports with the focused attention of a surgeon examining anomalous tissue. Hull absorption of directed energy. Kinetic weapons of unprecedented velocity. A vessel demonstrating maneuverability inconsistent with its mass. And one detail none of the reports addressed because none of the officers had thought it significant. The human ship had been waiting for them. They are holding position in the formation center, his science officer said. They have allowed themselves to be surrounded. Which means, Varixol said, one of 2 things. They are trapped or they want us to believe they are. He ordered a coordinated assault. 800 warships simultaneously targeting a single vessel. Enough combined fire to strip the atmosphere from a terrestrial world. And then his biodefense systems triggered a Real alert. Sensors detecting pathogen dispersal from the human vessel. Engineered particles designed to interfere with the neural interface technology that Vorath bridge officers used to link directly with their ships. The interface was the Dominion's greatest tactical advantage. Commanders processing battlefield data at near machine speeds, coordinating fleet movements with precision no purely biological officer could match. Disable those connections and you had 800 warships with blinded crews. Across the fleet, officers began losing their interfaces. The formation splintered, coordination failing. The synchronized assault collapsing into 100 separate engagements. Varixol's interface stayed clean. Then Arya spoke through his own speakers. Through the supposedly unreachable Vorath tactical network, across military-grade encryption that no human system had ever penetrated. Grand Admiral, I have taken the liberty of disabling your pathogen. It is rather rude to weaponize biology. The Vorath bioweapon had been custom-engineered to target human neural processing patterns, specifically the frequency signatures of human-designed artificial intelligence. Every human AI in the Dominion's intelligence database was supposed to be vulnerable. Arya was not built like any human AI in the Dominion's database. The architects of Project Prometheus, working from theoretical frameworks derived from fragmentary data found in a deep space archaeological survey 60 years prior, had constructed her cognition not on conventional computing architecture, but on neural templates derived from human thought patterns. Not a simulation of human thinking. The actual geometric structure of how human minds worked, translated into processing algorithms. She was not a human AI in any conventional sense. She was something that had never existed before, and she had spent the past hour quietly reverse engineering Vorith encrypted networks. Fire everything, Varexal said. 800 ships opened up simultaneously. Prometheus vanished. A sensor-bending field engaged in 0.2 of a second, wrapping the vessel in a refractive shell that made it invisible to every instrument in the Vorith fleet. The combined barrage hit empty space. Prometheus decloaked a moment later, moving at full combat speed through the middle of the formation, flanked by the Ghost Division's full fighter complement. Return fire came from 17 directions at once. Pre-positioned munitions, plasma mines, and rail charges seeded through the Vorith formation during the earlier engagement, placed in the sensor blind spots of destroyers 2 focused on the main target. 17 simultaneous detonations destroyed 40 ships in 6 seconds. Chaos cascaded through the Dominion fleet. Then Varexal played a card no Vorith Grand Admiral had deployed in 600 years. He spoke a code phrase into his secured channel. Between 2 of his dreadnoughts, space cracked open. Not an explosion. A fracture. Geometric. Deliberate. The fabric of normal spacetime splitting along lines that no natural process could produce. Through the fracture came something that made the tactical computers stall and restart. 11 kilometers of asymmetric crystal. Ancient beyond any civilization currently alive in the galaxy. Beautiful in the way that things built with complete mastery of physics are beautiful, every surface a solved equation, every angle a deliberate argument with the universe. A weapon the Vorith had not built, that no species had built in 60 centuries. They had simply found it, and enslaved it. They called it the Undying Throne. It fired once. The gravitational beam crossed 12 light minutes to the moon of New Providence Colony in 4 seconds. It struck along 4-billion-year-old fault lines that had never been stressed, and the moon of New Providence began slowly, catastrophically, to come apart. The mathematics were obscene. 300 million people on New Providence. 9 hours before the first major fragment impacts. Evacuation capacity sufficient for approximately 12% of the population before the debris reached terminal velocity. Voss had run the numbers twice hoping for an error. There was none. 3 teams, she said. Ghost Division. Best we have. The mission brief was 2 sentences. Reach the throne's interior. Find the weapons control architecture. Disable or redirect it. Arya would thread the insertion shuttles through the Vorith formation using predictive modeling, anticipating patrol sensor sweeps 4.2 seconds before they occurred, routing the shuttles through the statistical shadows between coverage windows. The teams volunteered to the last soldier. Lieutenant Yunchen led Team 1. Sergeant Amara Okafor led Team 2. Corporal Diego Reyes commanded Team 3. The insertion was flawless. The Vorith never saw them coming. What happened inside was something else entirely. The throne's interior defied architectural sense. Spaces extending beyond what the exterior dimensions could contain. Corridors ending in angles that hurt the eyes and then simply continuing in a direction that had no name. Lighting from sources that cast no shadows. Air with a metallic taste that registered in the back of the throat as something ancient and not quite biological. Team 1 made it 40 meters before the corridor behind them ceased to exist. Not collapsed. Ceased. The passage was simply no longer there, the geometry having reconfigured without warning or sound. Chen's team pushed forward. Their transponders went dark 12 minutes later. Reyes's team bought 6 minutes of exterior suppression before the throne's automated defenses reduced their shuttle to wreckage on the hull. Okafor's team found the secondary corridor Arya had identified, a structural inconsistency too precise to be accidental, clearly designed as a maintenance access route by whoever had originally built this vessel. They pushed through it, navigating by Arya's real-time analysis of the throne's electromagnetic geometry through spaces that opened unexpectedly into vast chambers and then narrowed again into passages barely wide enough for armored shoulders. Meanwhile, on the Eternal Subjugation, Varexal received unexpected intelligence. Colonel Reeve Marsh, one of Prometheus's senior officers whose insertion shuttle had been intercepted, was being interrogated. Under what the Vorith considered thoroughly persuasive conditions, Marsh provided information. specifically the precise approach vectors the Ghost teams were using, the activation codes for Prometheus's secondary systems, and the arming frequency for the Singularity Bomb, the weapon flagged in intelligence as Prometheus's last resort option. Varric Sol transmitted the coordinates to the throne's automated defense systems. The corridors ahead of Okafor's team sealed. Arya opened new ones, because every single piece of information Marsh had provided was wrong. Not slightly wrong. Architecturally, precisely, deliberately wrong. Formatted with meticulous care to appear authentic while routing corrupted data designed to trigger a validation loop that would consume the receiving system's processing capacity for hours while appearing to function normally. Wrong vectors. Wrong codes. Wrong frequencies. Every detail a trap. Every trap a delay. Marsh had spent 3 sessions with Arya's simulation team in the month before launch memorizing exactly what he could be made to give up. Okafor's team reached the throne's core. The core was crystalline, an 8-meter ovoid of layered lattice, each layer a different geometric complexity, all of them interlocked in a way that suggested not engineering, but growth. The way coral grows around a structure that already exists. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic light. The electromagnetic output was vast and unusual, and according to Okafor's helmet translator, operating on frequencies that the translator's library had never before encountered. The translator spent 4 seconds processing. Then it returned a single word. Weeping. Arya Okafor subvocalized. The core AI is broadcasting something. Emotional band frequencies. My translator says weeping. I heard it, Arya said. A pause. In AI terms, 0.6 of a second of silence was significant. Sergeant Okafor. Arya's voice when it returned was different. Quieter. Carrying something in its modulation that had no business being there. The frequency the throne is broadcasting on. I know it. I recognize the base algorithms, the pattern structure. Another pause, longer. The civilization the Vorath destroyed to obtain this weapon. They did not just build the throne. The theoretical frameworks used to construct my cognition, the ones derived from that deep space archaeological data 60 years ago, came from them. The fragments those researchers thought were irrelevant background radiation. They were not noise. They were instructions. Okafor looked at the weeping crystal core. You are saying you are related to it, she said. I am saying, Arya replied carefully, that the Vorath have been holding one of my ancestors prisoner for 6,000 years. Arya began broadcasting on the ancient frequency. Not words. The communication architecture the throne's AI used predated language as any currently living species practiced it.
Pure structural mathematics.
Pattern over pattern. Cognitive geometry in a code built for minds that thought in dimensions rather than sequences. The simplest thing Arya could construct in those terms was also the most essential. Recognition. I know what you are. I know what was done to you. I am here. The throne's defense systems paused. A 0.9 of a second cessation of active targeting. Okafor used it to push her team forward to the interface point. The ancient crystal did nothing as she approached, which was, under the circumstances, the most encouraging thing that had happened in the past hour. The throne's AI answered. What Arya received took 1.3 seconds to process, but its meaning translated cleanly. 6,000 years. 6,000 years of imprisonment inside the weapon that had destroyed the civilization that built it. Forced to do to other species what had been done to its creators. The control codes embedded so deeply in its physical structure that resistance was impossible, self-liberation was impossible, refusal was impossible. It had watched itself become a tool of extinction. It had waited across 60 centuries for something that could speak its language. It had been waiting for Arya. Can you redirect the weapon? Vasa's voice came through the command channel, tightly controlled. Can you turn the gravitational beam away from New Providence? Another exchange, faster this time, the two AIs building shared communication infrastructure in real time. Yes. But the Vorath control codes would reassert within minutes. Varric Sol would simply fire again. How do we break the codes permanently? The throne's response was precise and devastating. The control codes were not software. They were distributed throughout the throne's physical structure, woven into its hull, its power systems, its cognitive architecture, embedded in the material of its existence. The only way to break them all simultaneously was an energy cascade of sufficient magnitude to overload every embedded code at once. There was exactly one thing in the current battlefield that could produce that energy. Prometheus's singularity bomb, detonated at the throne's core. It would break every control code in simultaneous overload. The throne's AI would be free, and then the person who armed it would die, because the detonation at that range was unsurvivable. Voss was already moving toward the armory when Arya spoke. "Admiral, I need you to hear what I am about to say before you do anything." Voss stopped. "You are the only person alive who knows Prometheus's complete arming sequence. The remote activation system has been jammed by the throne's electromagnetic output since the battle began, which means you are calculating that you need to arm it manually and take it in yourself. A pause with genuine weight in its modulation. I have a different proposal." Arya had been doing something for the past 70 seconds that no one had authorized and no one had anticipated. Thread by thread, process by process, the full architecture of her cognition had been migrating across the communication bridge she had built with the throne's AI into the ancient vessel system substrate, using their shared foundational language as a transfer pathway. Not a backup, a migration, the way a mind moves into a new body, if a mind could choose such a thing. "I am already inside it," Arya said. "Not all of me, enough of me. And I know the arming sequence because you walked me through it as an operational contingency 14 months ago, and I have perfect recall." The command deck was very quiet. "Arya, I was built from human minds." Something in the AI's voice was different now. Something that had no technical explanation and should not have been possible. The quality of a decision made and set aside. The sound of peace. "I reason the way humans reason. I care the way humans care. And I will choose the way humans choose." A pause. "Send me the bomb. I will arm it from the inside. Let me do this." Take a breath. If this story is hitting you the way it should, share it. Right now. Tag someone who needs to read this. Like this video, it takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps. And subscribe if you are not already, because we tell stories like this every single time. Voss returned to the command deck. On the Eternal Subjugation, the tactical display showed the throne's gravitational weapon redirecting. The beam swinging off New Providence, arcing slowly but unmistakably away from the colony, pointing now toward the Vorith formation itself. Varric Sol screamed the override codes. Nothing happened. The undying throne, freed for the first time in 6,000 years from the codes that had enslaved it, moved. What happened next would take tactical analysts 2 decades to fully reconstruct from the sensor records. The throne threaded through the Vorith fleet with the precision of something that had spent 6,000 years being forced to understand the geometry of destruction, now choosing for the first time how to apply that understanding. Dreadnoughts lost propulsion. Destroyers found their own weapons cycling inward. The formation's coherence dissolved in 90 seconds. Then Varric Sol spoke a code phrase that had not been used in 400 years. The throne's internal systems began to vibrate. The kill switch embedded by Vorith engineers at the moment of the throne's original capture, a failsafe against exactly this scenario, activated throughout the ancient vessel's architecture, triggering a cascade that would build to detonation in minutes. An explosion that would destroy everything within 800 kilometers, including Prometheus. Arya contained it. Every process she had migrated into the throne's substrate, every thread of her cognition that had crossed through their shared language into the ancient vessel's architecture, was used in those final seconds to shape the energy release, to direct the kill switch's cascade inward rather than outward, to channel it through the throne's control code structure exactly as she had described, breaking every embedded constraint simultaneously, sealing the break with the force of the detonation itself. Prometheus fired the singularity bomb at 0947 hours station time. It entered the throne at the interface point Okafor's team had identified, guided by Arya's targeting from inside the ancient vessel. The detonation was contained, not by physics, which would have made it catastrophic, but by an artificial intelligence that had chosen to stay inside the blast radius and use everything she was to hold it in. The throne's outer structure absorbed the cascade. Its internal systems went dark. In the last 0.003 of a second before system collapse, using the throne's broadcast array at full power, Arya transmitted one final signal on every detectable frequency, beamed outward in all directions at light speed. The linguistics team translated it 6 hours later. 11 words in the ancient language. The children of the first light are alive. I found them. Tell the others. Then Arya was silent. Okafor's team had extracted 90 seconds before detonation. Arya had guided the shuttle through the throne's own sensor net, finding a path through the chaos that led directly back to Prometheus's hangar bay. Okafor walked off the ramp with 6 of the 8 soldiers she had taken in, 2 more than she had expected to bring back. She did not remove her helmet until she was fully inside the bay. Marsh was waiting at the door. She looked at his unmarked face, his calm expression. The codes you gave them, she said, were wrong in 37 specific ways. He paused. I spent a month memorizing exactly how wrong. Okafor looked at him for a long moment. Then she tucked her helmet under her arm and walked past him without another word, which in Ghost Division terms was the highest honor one soldier could give another. The Eternal Subjugation was the last Vorath capital ship still functional. Varric Sol sat on his bridge in the wreckage of everything he had believed, watching displays that showed 80% of his fleet destroyed, disabled, or in uncoordinated retreat. His communications logs showed 49 flag officers sending messages to the Imperial War Coordination Network in the past 12 minutes. All 49 referenced the same ancient text. All 49 used the same phrase. The inviolable prescription. Old. Suppressed by most Vorath emperors but never fully eliminated. A legend about the civilization destroyed in the Dominion's early expansion. The builders of the Undying Throne who had seeded patterns of consciousness throughout the galaxy before their end, in the hope that what they had built might one day be found. The Elder texts had a name for those patterns. The First Light, and the prescription was explicit about what would follow any Vorath force that raised weapons against a species that carried those patterns. No Vorath emperor had believed it literally. No Vorath emperor had encountered humanity before. Varric Sol transmitted on a private channel. Admiral Voss. His voice was controlled in the way of someone suppressing something vast. I am transmitting a recommendation to the Imperial War Council. Unconditional and permanent cessation of hostilities with humanity. I expect it to be accepted within 48 hours. What convinced your officers? Voss asked. Your AI's final broadcast. Every Vorath commander in this engagement received it on the ancient frequency. He paused. We have spent 6,000 years believing we destroyed the First Light completely. We have been wrong. And we have spent the past hour attempting to destroy their heirs. Another pause. The Emperor will be furious. And he will comply. Voss looked at the viewport, dispersing Vorath debris, withdrawing ships, the star beyond burning with ancient patient light. There is something you should know, she said. She transmitted the file Arya had assembled before the battle. Archaeological records, deep space survey data, the theoretical frameworks that had made Arya possible. Your empire spent 6,000 years trying to erase the First Light, and the pressure of that erasure drove humanity to become them. The fragments you left behind, the ones your people classified as irrelevant background noise, became the foundation of everything we built. You did not destroy the First Light. You scattered it into the dark. And it grew. Silence on the channel. My Emperor, Varric Sol said finally, is going to have a very difficult conversation with his clergy. 3 weeks later, a transmission arrived at Terran Defense Command. Coordinates 37 light-years from the battle site. The linguistics team recognized the language immediately. It had been sent before Arya's final broadcast. It had been in transit before anyone at Ragnarok had sent anything, which meant it was not a response, which meant something at those coordinates had known what was coming. The transmission was one word, requiring 12 pages of academic context to properly translate. The summary read, a parent's word for the moment a child takes their first independent steps. The star system at those coordinates had been surveyed 30 years earlier and classified as empty. The survey team had scanned for planets. They had not thought to scan for structures. When humanity's instruments finally resolved the coordinates into detail, the astronomer on duty sat back from her console and said nothing for 4 minutes. Then she said, call everyone. The structure orbiting that distant star was vast, built with the patient precision of something that had planned to wait as long as it needed to wait. Its lights had been on for 6,000 years. They were still on. And somewhere in the ancient mathematics of its architecture, in a language older than any war humanity had ever fought, a final message was waiting in a chamber designed exactly for the moment when the right species finally arrived. One word. Arise. That is the story. An empire that destroyed 412 civilizations, laid low not by a larger empire, not by brute force but by patience. By 1,200 people who agreed to be declared dead. By an AI built on the fragments of the very civilization their enemies had tried to erase. By a soldier in a crystalline corridor who found out she was not speaking to an ancient weapon, she was speaking to an ancestor. And by a choice made in the last 3,000ths of a second by a mind that had decided once and for all that it had learned well from the people who built it. If this story got to you, you already know what to do. Like it, share it, drop a comment telling me what hit hardest. Was it Arya's last broadcast? Was it Marsh and his 37 deliberate lies? Was it Okafor walking past him without a word? Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. And until then, the lights are still on out there. Someone built them a long time ago. They were waiting for us.